Hey guys, how you doing? I'm all rugged up. It's early in the morning here in Queensland and we're a bit soft, so get down to the gym early to warm up. Yoga this morning in the spa pool for half an hour to warm my body up before I come down and start teaching. But that's the gift of old age, I guess. Anyway, so there's been a lot of discussion lately. I think there's always a discussion about grading requirements in jiu-jitsu because it varies so dramatically from school to school, from association to association. There's some guy's got some wealthy billionaire guy that's got his black belt in 3.5 years because he's got non-stop private lessons with all the best guys in the world. But looking at the footage of him drilling and rolling, it's pretty despicable. Anyway, I'm not talking about that much, but because the majority of the world are white belts and blue belts, then I thought that I'd do a quick chat about that, especially from the perspective of, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which I've been doing for like nearly 30 years now. So at our school, for example, we have a curriculum from white to blue. There's 88 techniques. That includes like 10 warm-up things like break falls and rolls and hip outs and things like that. And then there's roughly like 15, 20 self-defense techniques, and they repeat themselves in every grade to ensure that, once you get beyond purple, then there's a lot of weapons added, sticks and guns and knives and things like that, to essentially the same movements that you've been learning since you're a white belt. So other than white belt, which is 88 techniques, then each subsequent grade has like 50. So it's like a technique a week, but it's gonna take, anywhere between 3 and 5 years to move between grades. It really depends on the student, their availability for training in class, Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. Either they're a lot older, like maybe they start after 50, and maybe they, haven't been terribly kind on their body the last 5 or 10 years. So it's gonna take a little while for their body to even adapt to jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But from white to blue, for example, the focus is really on jiu-jitsu fundamentals and specifically related to self-defense. When I hand out a blue belt, it's me recognizing, so it's recognizing that the student is competent in basic movement and that doesn't really get lost on the mat. Regardless of the position that they're in, they have a plan and they're able to execute it. Might not be perfect, but composure under pressure, is the motto that I have for blue belt. That's what I want to see. Someone who's calm under pressure, who problem solves, who knows where they are, who is finding a solution, and not getting punched on the head at the same time, right? Purple belt, the journey from blue to purple is primarily guard development, So there's a huge emphasis on developing your guard. There's 18 different sweeps. No doubt during that time you're going to learn about passing them, but it's really about guard development and combinations. So developing your guard as a white belt primarily is about being good at doing an armbar, being good at doing a choke, being good at doing a triangle. Because the assumption is that you're fighting somebody who doesn't know jiu-jitsu, which is 99% of street fights, right? Unless you're in San Diego, right? So anyway, so that's the primary emphasis, is know each technique well, doesn't have to be perfect. When you're rolling, you should be executing good technique, not just fumbling your way through, not trying to make stuff up, like trying to do the technique as you've been taught it during the class, right? That's what I want to see. And of course, we have 4 stripes on the way through. First stripe, I expect you to be able to execute and understand 10 techniques other than the warm-up stuff, right? So you should be able to, have an understanding of posture and passing the guard. You should be able to have an idea of staying safe and being able to escape from under side control. You should have an idea of how to stay safe and how to escape under mount. You should be able to control and submit from the mount. You should have 1 or 2 basic throws that you're okay at, that you kind of understand the mechanics behind. Simple things, and an effort to do them as per they were taught in the class, right? So you're not inside the guard trying to choke people from inside the guard. You know, like you have posture. If you get your posture broken, you know not to put your hands on the ground, you fight your way back to posture again, and you look to pass the guard and defend the submissions, right? Nice, simple stuff. Second stripe, 20, right? I'm looking for 20 techniques that you understand and that you can start to execute and, you know, do well on the mat with. Each stripe is like 10 techniques. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, that you understand, that you can execute, that you can demonstrate well, explain, and use at a reasonable proficiency, right? Blue belt takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years. It can take 4 years for some people if they only train like once a week, sometimes twice a week, have big breaks, things like that. Then it can just drag on a little bit for some people. You can get it in a year. If you're on the mat 4 or 5 days a week and you're a 20-something-year-old guy and you're very, very dedicated and learn really fast, then like it can get done in a year. I mean, I was on the mat like 6 hours a day for the first year, got my blue belt at the end of the year, winning 4 divisions at the Nationals and demonstrating my capability in no rules fighting, right? So white to blue, primarily self-defense, a lot of focus on, you know, that. Punch, defense, escape basic positions, understand takedowns, learn a little bit about how to stop them. Then, blue to purple is a completely different beast. It's completely different. And if you're not ready for it mentally and emotionally, and if you're not like a self-learner and can take responsibility for your own learning to a large degree, then that's where the majority of blue belts fall short and end up quitting, or in some instances move to a school that doesn't have such a strict curriculum and such high standards for what we expect. So the journey from blue to purple, and I say to all my new blue belts, I go, the first thing I want you to do is to look back at your white to blue curriculum, and I want you to pair up techniques. So pair up your choke with your arm bar, pair up your arm bar when the person pulls their arm out with the triangle. Yeah, so you're looking to combine, because combinations is really what I'm looking for. So for purple belt, I'm looking for efficiency through combinations. That's the mantra. Efficiency through combinations, right? And guard development. Like that, those two things come synonymously, because the majority of what's difficult is lying on your back using your legs, and learning how to off-balance people. Like off-balance somebody, so for example, white to blue belt, you learn how to put the person's hands on the ground using your hands, and you go for the Kimura, you can execute a Kimura. Excellent. When you're training, I see you do exactly the same setup, you get the Kimura, you're able to execute it, well done, that's awesome. Now, the same person, to be able to reach purple belt, I want to see them off-balance the person with their hips, yeah? Not so much using their hands. They can use their hands if they want, but for example, a couple of ways of doing it would be to do like a hip bump sweep movement with your hips. The person puts their hand down. They can't remove their hand from the floor because your hip pressure is placing weight on it. That allows you, at your own discretion, to be able to grab that arm and to be able to start using the Kimura. Now, knowing that the person is probably going to resist your Kimura by posturing, when they do that, you transition into the hip bump sweep and go back to the mount. That is what I expect from a purple belt, is to be able to use combination attacks, yeah, and distraction techniques to gain efficiency so that you're working with the opponent. Yeah, a lot of white to blue, there's a lot, you know, everybody's seen white belt tournaments and white belts fighting, and it's like a fight. They're working against each other. You know, it's not terribly efficient, but it's good enough for them to beat people on the street who don't know what who don't know what they're doing. They're going to headlock you and try and punch you and stuff like that. So like being able to deal with that kind of chaos, that's the journey of the white belt, and the journey from blue to purple. Yeah, you should already keep that. You know your self-defense. You just have to stay sharp with your self-defense. That's going to translate straight over to your purple belts. You don't have to stress about that if you're competent at it. And you know, drill it occasionally, stay sharp with it. But the journey from blue to purple, yeah, like this is where it's on the student a lot of the time, yeah, right? Is that they have to figure out how do they integrate these techniques into their jiu-jitsu. Because now, during your journey of 2 or 3 years through white belt, And this is one of the reasons why we have a strict curriculum, is to force everybody to go outside of the things that they like, to learn about techniques that initially they don't like, but then they find favor with them through persisting to learn a technique that you have to learn for your grading, do a difficult thing that you don't feel like doing, and then the great irony is that you actually enjoy it. You're like, I completely misunderstood how the mechanics of this worked, and it actually does integrate with some of the stuff that I know already. And now by persisting, you've found another technique that you really enjoy and is really effective for you. But if you only did what you felt like doing, if you only did what you're already good at, if you persist with what you're already good at and try and just develop that, then you miss out on so many nuggets in jiu-jitsu, because the goal is not to win, the goal is to learn, yeah? And if you're going to go to purple belt, you're gonna be one of the leaders in the gym for sure. So many people quit at white and blue that getting a purple belt is a big deal. And everybody is gonna look to you as a leader, and they're gonna ask you questions about the techniques that they're learning, that they're trying to execute. And if you only do what you're good at and what you like, you can't help other people, because you can just say, well, hey, I don't know anything about that, like, because this is my game over here. Well, in our style of jiu-jitsu, that doesn't fly, yeah? You should have a good understanding, because what's the point of being a purple belt if you can get caught out? I mean, I've seen black belts get caught out with white belt techniques simply because it's primarily a sport gym, and there's some basic white belt techniques that they do not learn, that they've discarded, that they think are inefficient or don't work, or only work in a gi, or whatever it happens to be, whatever the excuse is, that they want to do their thing, right? And that's fine, do your own thing, but it's not what we do here. We have very high standards. The Pedro Sauer Association is world renowned for extremely high standards and technical proficiency. And you can, when you gain a belt through the association, then you can proudly wear that blue belt, purple belt, brown or black belt anywhere in the world to any gym, and you'll be fine. Yeah, you'll fit in, you'll be of the standard, you'll be good enough, and there'll be no question marks around it. Some people can't meet that standard and leave to schools where they can get graded more easily, and power to them, but that's not what we're about, yeah? So, to summarize, white to blue, focus on individual techniques and doing them well, yeah? Learn to stay calm, learn to problem solve basic things, focus on your basic escapes, basic submissions, some simple throws, and your self-defense. Be consistent. You know, like I've got a little thing on the board here for beginners, right? Keep it simple, focus on consistent, well, you can see it here. There we go. Keep it simple, focus on consistency, improve your health and fitness, and be patient. For the blue belts, focus on your open guard development, use and rolling what you're drilling, focus on one thing at a time, create combinations for efficiency. So there it is on the board. I should have probably had that as my little backdrop to start with. But it's little things like this that I like to put up on the whiteboards from time to time, just to remind people of their journey, because I understand it's a difficult one, it's a long process. For purple belt, you're talking upwards of 5, 6, 7 years sometimes. Again, it really depends on the student, and do they have the time to dedicate to the art? Sometimes it's an emotional thing. Maybe they've never really had to extend themselves for long periods of time before and dedicate themselves to things that you know, there's a goal in mind, of course, but there's no like timeline. And for some people, you know, there's a podcast I really like, and the motto in that, or one of the sayings in it, is don't be scared of work that has no end. You know, like, it's a lifelong journey and there's no rush. Another favorite saying of mine is, man, it's too early for my brain, I tell you. Rush is the enemy of perfection, yeah? And it's exactly that. personifies Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in one sentence. Yeah? Don't be in a hurry. It's not a sprint. You know, yes, it can be difficult, but trying to rush it to get that discomfort over, the discomfort of learning and persistence and tenacity is never going to end. It's going to be there until the day you die if you do jiu-jitsu for the rest of your life. So there's no point trying to rush it, because all you're doing is rushing into the next belt, and then you're not going to be adequately prepared for that mentally or technically. So there is no rush. Take your time, do it properly. If you're struggling, you know, ask your coach, maybe get a private lesson, and then he can help direct you. I mean, I do my best to try and make it as simple as possible for students to know exactly what they need to do. We have curriculums on the wall. Their grading cards have the curriculum on it. The techniques that they learn every single class are marked off on their card. You know, and it's a bit of a no-brainer. But even then, it's still a long road. Yeah, it's still a long road. It's not easy, but if it was easy, everybody would have Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and they simply don't. So for the students here at my academy, they know that it's a long, tough road. They know that we have high standards. If they accept those high standards and move forwards and just focus on getting better, then the belts will come. If you're in a hurry because you don't have tenacity and resilience and perseverance, then that's going to be a frustrating journey, and you're going to feel like you're banging your head against a wall. Yeah, if you're pushing and trying to probe, I've had a few students this year push me about being graded, and they just end up leaving the gym because, like, you're not going to rush it. You're not going to force me to put a belt around your waist. That's simply not going to happen. Pedro is coming at the end of the year, and any belt that I put on somebody's waist has to measure up to his standards. It's not about mine. His standards are now my standards, and so I have to uphold the standards of the association, and some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. It's no problem at all. High standards are not for everybody. I understand that people, you know, have their own goals and ambitions, and if that doesn't meet, if it doesn't work, then that's fine, you know. I mean, I spoke to Pedro over a decade ago now. 2010, I think, was the first year I went to visit him. And we were talking about this exactly. And he goes, man, you know, for who I am, like Pedro, at his headquarters with hundreds and maybe thousands of students, you know, a coach who's won Instructor of the Year, I think like 3 times now. He's one of the most revered instructors in the world. Rickson Gracie's very top student. And he has students leave him to go join the, like, Craig Jones wannabe, unicorn, do whatever you feel like sport jiu-jitsu place down the road. Because, like, after a little while they realize, like, oh, you know, this isn't my cup of tea. I want to be able to just do whatever I want and you know, be rewarded when I feel it, and like that doesn't fly. So, you know, there's another gym down the road if it doesn't suit, and that's fine, you know. And it's hard losing students like that sometimes, you know. You've maybe invested in them for years sometimes, you know, and maybe even invested in them personally, like really, you know, because people have struggles and stuff like that, and it can be very difficult. But ultimately, our standards won't change or bend or yield for anybody, including myself. I have to uphold the same standards and show the same dedication and resilience and tenacity and technical excellence that is expected of people my grade. And personally, I never feel like I'm good enough. I never feel like I constantly suffer from imposter syndrome, and hence why, you know, I train every day, multiple times a day. When I'm teaching, I try and do the very best job that I possibly can. And on the days, on the alternate days, yeah, I'm at other academies learning, sitting there just like any other person, sitting on the mat, trying to learn, trying to get better, and realizing that, you know, my learning will just never end. And that's what I love about the art. It's the one thing. When I when I was 12, 11 years old, I knew I wanted to be a professional martial arts coach. I knew it. I wrote it down on the career guidance form on my very first day of high school. Knowing what I wanted to do, I just didn't know what art I wanted to spend my life teaching. You know, I did a lot of judo, I did a lot of karate, and I really couldn't see myself teaching either of those things. I wasn't at a judo standard where I could teach judo anyway. I just did a lot of it and enjoyed it. Karate, I did a lot of it, but I was like, I can't imagine just like teaching these particular katas and doing this particular art and teaching that day in, day out for the rest of my life. And it wasn't until I was 27 when I found jiu-jitsu that I realized this is the thing. It's practical, it kicks ass in fights, you know, it kicked my ass, and like it was a very difficult road. I liked the challenge of doing difficult things. There was no end to the learning, which satisfied the curiosity and constant drive that I have. And so it encompassed all that I had been waiting for. So I knew as soon as I found it that this is the thing that I've been waiting for all my life. So anyway, that's my story. Anyway, if you're a white belt, focus on doing simple things well. If you're a blue belt looking for purple, start combining all your basics and then work on your guard development. Anyway, have a good one, bye guys, bye.